The throne room fell silent the moment the child's hand began to glow. King Malveus stood frozen, his crimson eyes wide with an emotion he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. The ancient blood seal on his palm burned in response to the small girl before him, a servant's daughter who had no right to bear such a mark. But there it was, pulsing on her tiny hand, like a heartbeat made of light. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice cracking through the silence like breaking ice. The girl looked up at him with eyes too knowing for a child. "My mother told me to never show this to anyone, but you already know what it means, don't you, Your Majesty?" Around them the court held its breath, because the blood seal only appeared on one bloodline, the royal line, the line that was supposed to have ended with Malveus himself. Unless someone had been lying for a very, very long time. 7-year-old Rosalind had lived her entire life in the shadows of Thornvale Castle. Her mother, Heir, worked in the kitchens, scrubbing pots, preparing feasts for nobles who never looked at her twice, and whispering warnings to her daughter. "Never let anyone see your hand, Rosa. Never let the mark show." Rosa didn't understand why. The glowing rose pattern on her palm was beautiful, like a tiny window into a garden of light. Sometimes, when she was alone in their small quarters, she would hold it up and watch the petals shimmer and spin. But Mother's fear was real, so Rosa kept it hidden. Until the night of the Crimson Ascension, the ceremony where King Malveus would renew his immortal bond with the Blood Moon and extend his reign for another century. Rosa had been sent to deliver wine to the throne room. She wasn't supposed to enter during the ceremony, but the heavy doors stood open and curiosity pulled her forward like an invisible thread. Inside, the throne room was breathtaking. Columns of black marble soared toward a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations. Candles floated in mid-air, their flames flickering in impossible colors. And at the far end, seated on a throne of twisted iron and obsidian, was King Malveus. He was terrifying and magnificent. Silver hair cascaded past his shoulders. His crown was forged from black thorns, each tip gleaming with embedded rubies. His armor seemed alive, dark metal etched with intricate patterns that moved like smoke. But it was his eyes that froze Rosa in place. Glowing, crimson, ancient. He was performing the ritual. His hand raised toward a massive glowing sigil suspended in the air. A crescent moon wrapped around a thorned rose, the blood seal of Thornvale. And that's when Rosa's hand began to burn. She gasped, clutching her palm. The hidden mark flared to life, bright pink-white light bleeding through her fingers. Pain shot up her arm, and before she could stop herself, she cried out. The ritual shattered. The floating sigil exploded in a shower of light. The candles went out. The entire throne room plunged into darkness except for two sources of light, King Malveus's glowing palm and Rosa's. When the candles reignited, every eye in the chamber was on her. The king rose slowly from his throne, his expression unreadable. He descended the steps with predatory grace, his boots echoing in the silence. He stopped 3 feet away from her and extended his hand. The blood seal on his palm pulsed in perfect rhythm with hers. "Who?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "Is your mother?" Heir was dragged from the kitchens in chains. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She simply stared at her daughter with eyes full of resignation, as though she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. King Malveus stood before her in the throne room, his expression carved from ice. "Heir Thorn," he said quietly. "Or should I say Princess Heir Rosavale?" Gasps rippled through the assembled nobles. Heir's face remained blank. "I don't know what you're talking about, Your Majesty. I'm just a kitchen maid." "Liar." Malveus's voice cracked like a whip. He seized her wrist and yanked up her sleeve. There, etched into her forearm, was a faded scar. shaped exactly like the blood seal, but burned over as though someone had tried to erase it with fire and dark magic. "You were supposed to be dead," Malveus whispered, his voice thick with something that might have been grief. "They told me you died in the betrayal, that your entire family was slaughtered." Ilara's eyes filled with tears, but her expression remained distant. I don't remember. I don't remember anything before 15 years ago. I woke up in a village with no memory, no name, just emptiness." Malveus released her as though burned. He turned away, his hands clenching into fists. "Memory erasure," murmured the court mage, an ancient woman in violet robes. "Blood magic, forbidden for 300 years. Someone wanted her forgotten." "Who?" Malveus's voice was deadly calm. The mage's face paled. "Someone with access to the royal vaults, someone who knew the old spells, someone who—" She hesitated. "Someone from your own family, your majesty." Silence. Then Malveus turned back to Rosa, who stood trembling beside her mother. "The child," he said. "If Ilara carries the Rosavale bloodline, and the mark awakened in the girl—" His eyes widened. "How old is she?" "7, Ilara whispered. Malveus did the math. His face went white. 8 years ago, the last time I—" He staggered backward. "No, it can't be." But Rosa's hand told the truth. The blood seal didn't lie. The child wasn't just some distant royal descendant. She was his daughter. In the shadows of the Western Tower, Prince Corvain watched the chaos unfold in the throne room below. His brother, the golden, perfect immortal Malveus, stood surrounded by his court, staring at a kitchen maid and a glowing child as though they'd risen from the grave. Corvain's lips curled into a bitter smile. 15 years of careful planning, 15 years of buried secrets, and one stupid little girl ruined everything. He'd been so careful. The night of the betrayal, when the Rosavale family had challenged Malveus's claim to the throne, Corvain had orchestrated the massacre himself. He'd hired the assassins, planted the evidence, framed the rival family as traitors. Malveus, blinded by rage and heartbreak, had executed them all except one. Princess Ilara had escaped, wounded and desperate. Corvain had tracked her to a forest shrine and done what needed to be done, used forbidden blood magic to strip her memories, burn away her royal mark, and plant her in a distant village with a new identity. She was supposed to fade into obscurity, die forgotten. But somehow, impossibly, she'd ended up back at Thornvale, back in Malveus's orbit. And worse, she'd given birth. Corvain's hand tightened on the windowsill. The child shouldn't exist. He'd made sure Ilara never remembered her night with Malveus before the betrayal. Made sure she'd never seek him out. But blood called to blood. And now the secret that would have secured Corvain's place as heir, the secret that Malveus's line would end with him, was standing in the throne room with a glowing hand, proving the dynasty would continue. Unless Corvain did something about it. He turned from the window and walked toward his private chambers, where darker magic waited. "If Malveus wants his lost family back," Corvain murmured, "he can join them in death." Malveus sat alone in his chambers, staring at his glowing palm. Memories he'd buried for 15 years clawed their way to the surface. Princess Ilara Rosavale. She'd been beautiful, kind, the only person in the court who'd looked at him and seen a man instead of a monster. They'd shared one night together during the Festival of Blood Roses, one perfect night before everything went to hell. And then the betrayal happened. Her family had been accused of plotting to assassinate him and seize the throne. The evidence was overwhelming. Malveus, young and furious and heartbroken, had ordered their execution. Ilara had vanished during the massacre. He'd assumed she'd been killed in the chaos. He'd mourned her for decades, and all this time she'd been alive, stripped of her memories, hidden in plain sight. By whom? A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Enter." The court mage stepped inside, her expression grave. "Your Majesty, I've examined the spell residue on Ilara's scar. The signature is familiar." "Who?" She hesitated. "Your brother, my lord, Prince Corvain." The room went very cold. Corvain? He has access to the royal vaults. He studied forbidden magic in his youth. And, she paused, he's the only one who would benefit from erasing the Rosevale line. If you have no heirs, the throne passes to him. Malveus rose slowly, darkness gathering around him like a living cloak. "Where is my brother?" "I don't know, Your Majesty, but—" Her face went pale. "The child. If Corvain realizes she exists, realizes she's your heir." Malveus was already moving. Rosa woke to the sound of screaming. She bolted upright in the small bed she shared with her mother in the guest chambers. Ilara was already on her feet, pulling Rosa behind her. "Stay close," her mother whispered. The door exploded inward. Shadows poured into the room, living darkness that coiled and writhed like serpents. And walking through them, wreathed in black flame, was a man Rosa had never seen before. He looked like King Malveus, same silver hair, same sharp features, but his eyes burned with purple-black light, and his smile was cruel. "Hello, niece," Prince Corvain said softly. Rosa's hand flared with light instinctively. The blood seal blazed, and the shadows recoiled. Corvain's eyes narrowed. Strong already. Unfortunate. He raised his hand, and the shadows lunged. Ilara threw herself in front of Rosa, and the darkness slammed into her instead. She screamed as it wrapped around her throat, lifting her off the ground. "Mom!" Rosa's seal burned brighter, and suddenly the entire room exploded with light. The shadows evaporated. Corvain staggered backward, shielding his eyes, and Rosa felt it, the castle responding to her. The walls, the stones, the ancient magic woven into Thornvale's foundation. It recognized her. The floor beneath Corvain cracked, and thorned vines erupted upward, wrapping around his legs. He snarled, tearing at them with shadow claws, but more kept coming. "Impossible," he hissed. "You're just a child. You can't—" The door shattered again. King Malveus stood in the doorway, his armor glowing with crimson light, his eyes blazing with ancient fury. Corvain. The prince smiled, despite the vines crushing his legs. "Hello, brother." "You erased her." Malveus's voice was barely human. "You stole 15 years from me, from her. From—" His gaze flicked to Rosa. "From my daughter." "She's a mistake," Corvain spat. "An abomination. Your line was supposed to end. I was supposed to— You were supposed to be my brother." Malveus's voice cracked. "And you destroyed everything." He raised his hand, and the blood seal on his palm ignited. The entire castle trembled. The battle between the brothers shook Thornvale to its foundations. Malveus and Corvain clashed in the throne room, centuries of power unleashed in a maelstrom of light and shadow. The court fled. The walls cracked. The ancient sigils carved into the stone began to glow. And in the chaos, Rosa ran. Not away, toward. She didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand magic or politics or betrayal, but she understood one thing. The glowing mark on her hand was trying to tell her something. It pulled her through the castle corridors, past fleeing servants and crumbling walls, down ancient staircases she'd never seen before, to the heart chamber. The oldest part of the castle, a circular room deep beneath the throne, where the first king had laid the foundation stone of Thornvale. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and floating above it, pulsing with light, was the true blood seal, the original sigil from which all others were descended. Rosa approached slowly. The seal responded to her. Light poured from it, warm and welcoming, wrapping around her like a blanket. And suddenly she understood. The castle wasn't just stone and magic. It was alive, sentient, and it had been waiting for her. "You are the heir," a voice whispered in her mind. "The true line, the one who will heal what was broken." Rosa placed her small hand on the seal, and the castle chose her. The explosion of light was visible for miles. Every person in Thornvale, noble and servant, mage and soldier, felt it. A pulse of pure, ancient power that radiated from the heart chamber and flooded through every stone, every corridor, every forgotten corner of the castle. In the throne room, Corvain screamed as the darkness he'd summoned evaporated. The forbidden magic burned away from his veins, leaving him powerless, collapsing to his knees. Malveus stood over him, chest heaving, his hand still glowing. But then the light changed. Golden white, pure. Not his crimson power, but something older. Rosa emerged from the stairwell, glowing like a small sun. The blood seal on her hand had fully awakened. Not just a copy of her father's mark, this was the original, the source from which all royal power flowed. She walked across the shattered throne room floor, and where her feet touched, the cracks sealed. The broken stones reformed, the damaged columns straightened. The castle was healing itself. For her. She stopped in front of her father and looked up at him with eyes that suddenly seemed far too ancient for a 7-year-old. "The castle told me the truth," she said quietly. "About what happened, about the betrayal." Malveus knelt before her. "Rosa, you don't have to. The Rosavale family didn't betray you." Her voice was steady. "They were framed. By him." She pointed at Corvain. "He wanted the throne, so he made you kill the people who loved you, including my mother's family." Corvain laughed bitterly. "And what will you do about it, little girl? Execute me. You're too soft. Too—" Rosa's hand flared, and suddenly Corvain couldn't speak. Magical bindings wrapped around him, thorned vines made of pure light. "The castle has judged you," Rosa said, and her voice echoed with something far older than herself. "You will live, but you will never touch magic again. You will never harm anyone again, and you will spend the rest of your immortal life remembering what you destroyed." The light seared into Corvain's skin, burning away his connection to magic. He screamed silently, writhing in the bindings. And then it was done. Corvain collapsed, powerless, broken. Rosa turned back to her father, and suddenly she was just a little girl again, tears streaming down her face. "I want my mom." 3 months later, Thornvale Castle stood transformed. The darkness that had clung to its stones for decades had lifted. Gardens bloomed in courtyards that hadn't seen sunlight in years. The people, commoner and noble alike, walked the halls without fear. And in the newly restored Rose Garden, a family sat together. Queen Elara, her memories fully returned, her royal mark healed and glowing faintly on her arm, held her daughter close. King Malveus, his crimson eyes softer now, sat beside them, his hand resting gently on Rosa's shoulder. Princess Rosalind, the child who had shattered a kingdom of lies and rebuilt it on truth, laughed as she chased a butterfly through the roses. "Do you think she understands what she did?" Elara asked softly. Malveus shook his head. "Not fully, but she will, when she's older." "And when she's older?" Elara's voice held a hint of worry. "She'll be expected to rule." "Yes." Malveus watched his daughter with something that looked almost like awe. "But not alone. Never alone." He took Elara's hand, and their blood seals pulsed in harmony. 15 years had been stolen from them, but they had eternity to make up for it. In the dungeons far below, Corvain sat in his cell, powerless and forgotten, listening to the laughter of the family he'd tried to destroy. And in the heart chamber, the ancient blood seal pulsed with quiet contentment. The true heir had been found, the broken line was restored, and Thornvale, for the first time in centuries, had a future filled with light. The end.